cruelty is the point with Governor Ron DeSantis. He's sending a message to LGBTQ Floridians that he doesn't care about their needs, he doesn't see them, he doesn't hear them. He's erasing their identities and lived experience. And to be doing all of this during Pride Month, when we're meant to celebrate the visibility of LGBTQ people, and certainly making sure that we push back against homophobia and transphobia, the governor is unfortunately doing the exact opposite.
Well, there's quite a lot to break down there. Of course, the governor's office says that there is additional mental health funding that has been made available in the budget. Why does there need to be a specific source of funding for the LGBT community, I wonder?
Well, there's lots of different ways that different communities access mental health services. It's important, especially when we're dealing with the Hispanic community or the LGBTQ community. In this case, we're dealing with both, that we have culturally competent mental health care service providers, folks who understand the needs of their clients, folks who understand what they've been through as LGBTQ people who perhaps have faced family rejection, who don't have the traditional support structure that others can expect.
The attack at Pulse was one of the worst, or the worst, attack against the LGBTQ community in American history. And 5 years later, the data show that we are now experiencing a spike in attacks against particularly trans women of color. And I wonder what you make of that we're sort of 5 years out from that attack, but we're sort of still facing these issues on that scale.
Well, it's another painful reminder that gun violence prevention is an LGBTQ rights issue. Our community has been disproportionately impacted by easy access to firearms in the United States, whether it has to do with access to military-style assault weapons, like the one that was used at Pulse nightclub to commit the worst act of hate against the LGBT community in our country's history, whether it's the rash of violence against transgender women, where those acts are almost always committed with a firearm, or whether it's the LGBTQ and trans youth suicide rate. And we know that firearms have frequently been used as well in attempts, successful and unsuccessful, to commit suicide. Our community has, really been disproportionately impacted by easy access to firearms. 5 years later, have we made some progress? We've made some. We've seen some small steps with laws that have passed even here in Florida, like the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School Safety Act, with the red flag laws that were passed in that bill, raising the age from 18 to 21 to purchase a firearm. But there's still so much more work that we have to do at the state and federal level, especially as it relates to restricting access to weapons of war.
But it seems like it might have constitutional problems, right? I mean, we just saw that ruling by a federal judge overturning California's assault weapons ban. What makes you think that something like that in Florida will be able to hold muster?
Well, one judge in California who compared military-style assault weapons to a Swiss Army knife made bogus claims about constitutionality, but we know that that case is going to be appealed, and we're really confident, gun violence prevention advocates like myself, that the assault weapons ban in California will ultimately be upheld, as it has been in multiple other cases in other courts. We all respect the Second Amendment right of Americans to carry firearms to protect themselves and their family. That's never been in question. But the Constitution does not give anyone the unequivocal right to access a weapon of war.
You were the first Latinx LGBTQ legislator in Florida. And being in that position, you have a sort of a unique position to speak about the tragedy at Pulse. And I wonder what that tragedy means to you, and how does it affect the way you carry out your responsibilities as a legislator?
You know, the tragedy at Pulse nightclub is something that I think about every single day. It's the reason why I wear this ribbon on my jacket. I always have it on because it helps me center my work in the legislature and in the community around what's really important, which is life, love, and equality for all. It's also about honoring them with action, honoring those 49 angels who were taken at Pulse nightclub, whether it be through advocating for the rights of LGBTQ people, making sure that we pass common sense gun safety laws that will protect our communities from gun violence, or being a strong advocate for mental health resources, especially specifically for the Pulse community, as we have been. So 5 years later, I think that the 5-year remembrance gives us all, myself included, the opportunity to reflect and recommit to honor those 49 angels with action, and that's what we absolutely plan on doing.
What do you think about the memorial? What do you think about the federal legislation to create a national memorial? Florida's 2 senators, I think, are pushing that in the Senate. Do you hope that passes? Is that an important step to take to recognize the Pulse tragedy as a national tragedy that way?
Absolutely. I applaud Congressman Soto's work with the Central Florida delegation to designate the Pulse nightclub space as a national memorial site. That's really important. We need to make sure that that space, that hallowed ground is one that is preserved, not only so that families and survivors can have that space of reflection, but also so that future generations can learn about what happened here on June 12, 2016, that they can see how the Orlando community came together with a message of love and acceptance for LGBTQ people. I'm supportive of the Pulse Memorial and Museum project. That's why we worked in Tallahassee to make sure that we were able to secure critical state funds to help in that effort. But it's also important for people to understand that the needs of the Pulse community go way beyond any museum or memorial site. There are real critical needs as it relates, of course, to mental health services and other support programs for the survivors and families of the attack at Pulse that are also very important and that need our attention and support.